Live from Washington, D.C., it's the Paydirt Football Show.
Are you trying to give me the double talk?
You talk too much.
And now, sit back and listen to 2 hours of biased, brainless blithering sure to drop your sports IQ by at least 20 points.
7 years of college down the drain.
Paydirt is on the air.
Welcome, everyone, to the PAFL Action PC Football League over at PaydirtFootball.com radio show for, I think this is week 12 or 13. Week 12, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, anyway, we're going to get started with the show here because we're working on a tight schedule tonight. So, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you to kick it off, Calvin.
Very good. And I'll start by saying good evening to my cohort, Joe.
Good evening, Calvin. How are you doing?
Really good. Again, thank you for the predictions on the PAFL. But for those listening in, this show is mainly, probably solely going to talk about the PSAFL. And the goal is to kind of explain what's about to happen as far as what's the flow when the disc is released and all of that, and kind of walk you through the rules and just we might have a few unique things and talk through that. And so you can maybe file this away if you want a little bit of a primer on what we're about to do in the next month or less, hopefully. And again, always read the rules. One other disclaimer, when you go to our rule page, it's kind of formatted, kind of funky. It's challenging. Len does all the stuff on the website. So Len is the website guru, but sometimes I give him Word docs and the formatting gets a little screwy. So if you look at the rules and you see some screwy formatting, Len works on that as he has time. And the other thing you might see in our rules, you'll see some red lines. We like to show the differences. And I'm actually going to highlight some things that aren't in the rules just yet, as we try to keep our other league, our PFL, whoever the brother and the sister league is, we try to keep them in sync. So we're going to dive right in. Joe can interject at any time. But first thing you need to know is our salary cap is $120 million. I'm going to say, quote unquote, you can never go over that, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So what's about to happen is the action game will be released eventually, and if you pre-order, you will get the ratings from that text file. Now, last year, I actually have people that have the actual data that's in that text file, even though it's still preliminary, and I was able to use that data and create what our disc would look like in the PSAFL, with an understanding that there's a chance a rating or something could change between the time that comes out and the final disc. It's the same disclaimer you will get when you pre-order. They'll say you'll get the text file, but things could change. And last year we talked about it at the PSAFL, and we made a decision. We had a path. We could wait for the official disc and then draft, and that would set us back a few weeks. Or we could draft off of the preliminary ratings, which typically do not change much at all, but they can change a little, and get started like 3 weeks earlier. The league preferred to start earlier because there are a fair amount of people that have fall leagues, and they were trying to minimize overlap. So my assumption this year is we're going to try to operate the same way. We will pre-order, we will get the text file. Hopefully somebody will give me the disc that ties to those text files, and we can start drafting.
If I remember correctly, I wouldn't be shocked if next week we don't get the email letting us know that we can pre-order.
Somebody was saying that on the action site. You're exactly right, Joe. About March 27th, I think, was the magic date last year.
And I believe that Chuck Halling had sat there and said he timed it down to where the actual, if you order the full game, don't just order the cheapest version. There's usually 3 versions. There's like the cheapest.
Yeah,
mid,
the base
and,
game doesn't have like the current disc or something.
or
Yeah.
it doesn't give you the access to those early ratings. But if you buy the
Correct.
one in the middle, give them an extra $10. You will get that ratings thing sent to you. Generally speaking, about 2 weeks later.
Yes.
And that's 2 weeks before, because the game historically has been released on around the weekend of the draft.
I'm really hoping that he does add something new this year. It's been a while since we've had a major update or upgrade with this game.
But it's playing weird though. It's got a lot of random. Go ahead though, Joe.
I was going to say, Pat Crew, who's in a couple leagues that I'm in, he's a beta tester for Action PC. And I have talked to him and implored, it's like, you know what, Dave, rather than sit there and make this game all, put the newest, twists as far as like, special plays and all this, I have a great idea. Why don't we make it work? Why don't where
How
we
novel.
don't actually, why don't we make it to where it doesn't freeze up in overtime? Or,
Well, one of my suggestions all along has been, how hard would it be to just add an option there where you can export as you play the game log, like that is printed out at the end, that you can pull up and check out all the stats and play by play. It shouldn't be that difficult to just add the option for people to log in and watch that play by play. They don't have to see the game, but it would be nice to have that play by play exported out over the web so that we could, maybe we could put it on the site and have these play-by-plays on the site as it's played. It might take a little work to do that, but come on, it's been the same game for essentially 10 or 15 years now, and I'm starting to wonder why I'm buying the new game just to get, new rosters. We don't have to buy the new game to just get new rosters. Let's do something.
Yeah, but there was a big change though where he expanded the roster size. But anyway, that created a lot of bugs to go
Yeah,
show this other point. There was that. So now we're going to dive in. What's going to happen? You'll get your disc. You'll get your PAFL disc. And the first thing I can tell you, you're allowed to keep absolutely everybody that's on your screen, every player that you had last year. I will give you the file that'll show you all the players that didn't match from last year. And so you're expected to do some verifications. If you had a player that was injured all last year and you own his rights, it's kind of up to you to call or check that text file and say, hey, I want Joe added to my roster as an uncarded player. But if you do that, we'll get to that. That's a special thing called a taxi squad. But we'll start with, you'll get your disc. You'll have all your wonderful players. It doesn't matter if your salary is $180 million at this point. It does not matter if you have 75 players. It matters not. You get everybody on your team. Now, we will immediately start the rookie draft, and you cannot trade still. When you get that wonderful disc and you got those $180 million players, you cannot trade them. You cannot trade picks away to get out from under the cap. That's one of our unique things we do. There are many leagues out there. The new disc comes out. You trade till your heart's content. You become cap compliant. We do not do that here. You get your disc, and if you want to release players before the rookie draft, you can. But I'll keep it simple. Everybody gets their disc. They find any missing players, whatever they want to do. But we will fire up the rookie draft. And we will draft the full 7 rounds on the rookie draft. Again, it matters not if you finish the rookie draft with 80 players and $150 million. It matters not. Now, at the end of the rookie draft, you still cannot trade. At the end of the rookie draft, you must have no more salary on your team than $120 million, period. So you have to cut, and it is painful. I've done it for a few years running in the other league, PAFL. There's estimates that I'm going to be setting at about 128 based on Pat Cruz estimated this. I'm going to start this 8 million over, not including my rookies. I may be 15 million over. I'm going to have to cut players at the end of the rookie draft. That's the first part. At the end of the rookie draft, you must be below 120 million, period. Now, there are some things you can do. We have this taxi squad that I alluded to. You can put 2 players on your taxi squad, and there's eligibility listed in our rules. Basically, they have to play 5 games or less in the NFL. Once you put them on taxi, they're taxi for the whole season. You cannot use them. The rules say we make their salary 0, but there's like a bug in the game, so we actually have to make their salary 1, and they're marked inactive. They're done. It's like a one-time election. You make it, you're done. You get a max of 2. And then we have about 1 week of trading. Now you can trade till your heart's content, but you got to stay below the cap, and you have to be conforming to all of our rules, because at the end of 1 week, then trading is going to stop, and now we're going to do something that's very unique, and that's our free agent bidding process. So the way that works is, again, a lot of leagues will have a draft. Let's just draft all the remaining players, good, bad, or indifferent. You can have your preference. It doesn't, everybody may have a different opinion on this, but what we do here is we will have free agent bidding. And the way that works is, let's say you've finished your rookie draft, you've finished cutting players, and your team salary is setting at $80 million. That means you have $40 million of cap space that you could use to sign free agents. But if you had 52 active players, your roster is full. You cannot participate in free agent bidding. So to make my example better, you'll have $40 million of cap, because your salaries will say is $80 million, and we'll say you have 42 active players. So that means you've got 10 spots, and of those 10 spots, you can spend a maximum total of $40 million. And you just bid till your heart's content. It's high bid. We use Strat Draft. It is pretty slick. It tracks your total cap that you have for you. It tracks whether you make sure you can't bid more money than you have. It does all that for you, but now I have to give a caveat. While it does track that you haven't exceeded your total bill, your total budget, like my 40 million example, if I've got 10 spots and I bid 40 mil on one player, I'm in trouble, because I've got to fill 9 other spots, and the game requires $350K salary times those 9 other players. So you do have to do a little math in your head. You have to look at that 40 million in my example, and you have to calculate. You have to make sure that you can fill your 10 roster spots, accounting for the minimum roster spot is $350K. And note, you cannot bid on somebody in free agency and dump them on the taxi squad. You cannot do that. So that was rather a lot, but that is the flow of what's about to happen. New disc, rookie draft, cut, trade a week, free agent bidding, which I didn't say. Free agent bidding ran about 3 weeks last week. And we will probably have another show on more of the details of free agent bidding, but in general terms, we will put up a block of, say, 300 or 400 players at a crack. And the way you win is you're the high bid for 24 hours. If you want to be precise, it's high bid for 23 hours and 50 minutes. That's the way that's the biggest. Strat Draft doesn't let you do a full 24 hours. So if you're the high bid for 23 hours and 50 minutes, you win the player. And we proceed until everybody has filled out their rosters to 52 active players. And active players are not including Taxi Squad. Taxi Squad, you're allowed 2 others. So that was a lot of Calvin, but that is where we are headed. There's a few other gotchas on the free agent bidding that you got to be careful of. before we go into free agent bidding, so at the end of this 1 week of trading that we're going to have, you cannot be hoarding quarterbacks. You are not allowed to have more than 800 attempts when we start free agent bidding, nor are you able to try to sign somebody that puts you over 800 attempts. Again, Strat Draft doesn't track this, so you have to do some work. Calvin's not going to warn you. The onus is on you to track that. Same thing with running backs. You cannot exceed 540 rushes during bidding. So some of this is you just got to pay attention to, but you can also see how much competition you may have for a running back, because if there's only say there's a back out there with 300 carries arbitrarily, you can count on your hand how many teams could actually sign them, because they can't go over this 540 rushes. And we have a similar thing on receptions. The 640 receptions you cannot exceed, and you cannot hoard kickers or punters. You got to be in compliance before free agent bidding starts and throughout. So I think that is most of our wrinkles and unique things. I don't know if Joe or Lynn thinks I missed something.
Well, I learned this last year because you and I had a spirited discussion.
Yes.
if one of the players that you put on IR, according to the way the rules are currently written, one of the players you put down on IR is a running back, and that running back has a 30 attempts. Now you only have 510 attempts for the guys that you can actively have on your roster. But I mean, yeah.
You're still subject to the max. You're still same, like an extreme example. You have a quarterback with 300 attempts. You think you put him on taxi. Oh, I don't count those 300 attempts. Actually, we do. Yeah. We count those attempts whether you're active or not. Again, what's the method? What's our reasoning? We're trying to make sure that we have a fair pool of players available for all. To those that if you don't want to trade a lot, that's fine. You can still build a team. And we try to balance that. We don't want teams having to brutally cut every year where it's basically a draft, a redraft every year. We're trying to balance both. We think we have a pretty good mix. We're biased, but we think we have a pretty good mix based on what's happening in the PAFL. We think that you can come in with a weak team, and in a couple years, you can be competitive quickly. That's the method of the madness of our free agent bidding. Now, there is one new wrinkle. There is one new wrinkle on free agent bidding, and Andy will like this. Andy is our owner of Washington. What we did last year on free agent bidding, and I know this is roughly true, the Trevor Etienne, my ex-Gator, I don't know if he was a Gator, his brother's a Gator, but anyway, he was available in free agent bidding. He was injured his whole first year. He was uncarded, so he wasn't available in our rookie draft. So it was a spirited bidding war, and he pulled like 20 million, maybe 22 million. I got it on my screen here, but we'll just say 22 million. Last year, Seattle had to carry him on their roster at the full bidding price, 22 million. And you can imagine when you put 22 million on a single player, you're going to really be hurting in the short term. So we've talked a little bit about this on Slack on the PAFL, and this was well received by teams that were perennial winners. So this is not, something that's just, flippant, but some of our long-standing owners all thought this was a good idea. So Andy says, get to the point. Well, the point is this year, everybody out there, and particularly Andy, at the end of free agent bidding, when you've signed all these players, like my example of having the $40 million to bid on, and you bid $20 million on player X and 10 on player Y, at the end of free agent bidding, all of those salaries are going to revert to what they were originally in the game. So let that sink in a bit. So those that have a lot of salary cap should still have an advantage and the players they can sign, but at the end of free agent bidding, their salaries will revert back to what the game has them listed as. So you won't be punished so much for signing a really good player. Punished meaning like you won't have to carry that $20 million salary. You want him, and you get them at the game level, which might be 5 million, and then you can still trade. And before I forget this thought, another weird rule, perhaps from your perspective, especially if you're a mad flipper, in the PAFL, you cannot trade any signed free agent, period. You cannot trade them till after the year. This is not, again, a league. A lot of leagues don't do this. You can sign whoever you want and flip them like hotcakes. We don't do that here. This is not a flip. When you sign those free agents, they're yours for the year. Now, something that we did this year, we passed in the PAFL, and we're going to do the same thing here. You can cut them. We will now let you cut them. And our rules will be updated on this. If you sign a free agent and change your mind, you don't want him, you can cut him. But you're on the hook for his salary. So if you cut a player for $1 million and you want to sign another in-season free agent pickup, which is just a loaner for the year, you got to pay $1 million more than the player that you sign. I'll actually change the salary to make sure everything that you stay cap compliant. There's a long reason why we did that. We ran into trouble with some teams that were signing like 20 free agents to fill slots, and then they got stuck. So we want to give them a little bit of flexibility, because if you can't cut them, then you get in trouble during the season and you'll have to cut a really good player. We thought that was punitive. So bear in mind, any signed free agent, you cannot trade. And you'll say, well, how do you track all this? Well, inside the game, if you were to open up his player card, right under their main name, I happen to be looking at a player that's not we'll say that we'll go back to ETN. If you were to open up ETN in the PSAFL league, right under his name in capital letters, you would see FAS, which means free agent signed, which means when I process all the trades, I'm always pulling up all the players and making sure you're not inadvertently trading a free agent that's signed, because that is not allowed. That's a lot of Calvin monologue. Shows are not usually like this, but we wanted this to be more informal, more formal, more informational, if I can find the right word, to try to talk some of our new players, our new owners, how this process is going to work as we go forward.
Well, I mean, obviously, number one, I think it's public knowledge. I am not as big a fan of the bidding as Calvin is. However, the one change that you've proposed and it's going to get implemented in terms of taking the salaries back down to the carded values is an excellent idea. I think that the teams that should be able to be active in last minute trades in the past, and particularly in the PAFL where Don was kind of handicapped, I'm sure Don would have loved to have been able to have made some trades to get some players as he's having his unexpected playoff run. And to be able to have added some last minute defensive players would have helped him out tremendously. This allows for a team that does overachieve during the season to at least get that play. The second thing is, and I would say this, is that in the PAFL, the time frame between the time we have our rookie draft and I mean we inverse those two drafts in the PAFL, but there's a gap between on the free agent draft where we do that like late summer, and then we have several months before and we start trading right away. To where as opposed to our October rookie draft, if you have two quarterbacks and if you're over, you've got 1 week to clean that up. You've got one week to clean up that extra running back, which means you're probably not going to get the market. So if you've got that inclination of hey, let me in the third or fourth round, let me draft that prospective quarterback or that prospective running back. Just understand, okay, they're going to be on your roster, but you're not going to be able to do anything with them until the following year. And then when you do, you've got 1 week to clean up what you got. and you're probably not going to get the market value that you want.
I think you will get market value because there's a lot of people that negotiate trades early. But, I mean, it's a week. The good thing is it's a active week. So if you're the casual owner, and nothing wrong with that, wow, this is like 1 week. I got these two quarterbacks. I mean, I made a trade. I traded a running back today. Somebody reached out, on our Slack channel and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a running back." And I'm like, "Okay, I got a running back." Now, all I made was an agreement to do a trade after cut down, after the rookie draft. But that's the way you can also get things done, much like Cincinnati was looking for a running back. I'm like, "Hey, you're looking for a running back? I got 2 running backs. Maybe we can do something." And that's the way it works. If you get involved on Slack, you might hit half of our owners are active on Slack, half are not. You might send an email. Again, you're not violating any rule. You're just saying, "Hey, by the way, I need this. Let's see if there's any interest." And you can kind of set up a gentleman's agreement that we call, and then at the end of the rookie draft, away you go and you can trade. And honestly, if Pat Crew's estimates are pretty good, we don't have, I think Tampa Bay is the highest team, setting about 122 million without rookies. So you can probably swing a trade and not endanger yourself going over the 120, but you do have to be cognizant of that. You might make a killer trade, and then you might have to cut 4 or 5 people just because, and that's just part of doing the game. And I did just check here just to give y'all a brief flavor, and I could post this eventually on the site, but Travis Etienne went for 22.5. Robert Hainsey went almost 18.2. Jelani Tavai-Havers, 15,000. But we had 15 million. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We had 7 10 million offers last year plus. Again, that'll sound outrageous, but that worst teams or the teams with the most caps can be very active. You have a team like Seattle that went for ETN at 22.5. You had a team like Chicago that dropped out on ETN and instead got 2 other players. And the beauty, we think, some of us, of the free agent bidding is that you can, it's kind of fun. You could strategize. Do you want to go all in on one player, or do you want to say, well, the one player is getting too high, maybe I can swoop up 2? And I would make the argument that a team like Chicago probably got 2 of the top 20 players in bidding that they would have never gotten a draft. But anyway, I don't want to get into counterpoint. Like here's Jaylen Warren out of the blue. He went for $9 million, but by reverting the salaries back, then those teams can still trade now and try to be more competitive. Hopefully that's clear. If it's not clear, please review the rules. If it's not clear, hop on to Slack, and there's always robust conversations there. Send me an email. We don't do long discussions on email. We will do simple, I got a player available. We don't get into any, terms of engagement or battles on email. We try not to. We try to stay clear of that on Slack, but once in a while, things happen. So hopefully this was informative on what y'all are to expect. Hopefully we can order our game next week. Hopefully 2 weeks after that, we can have everybody see the text ratings of the file of the players so we can start the draft. And even better, I hope that I can get a official copy of those ratings so I can import it into the game and we can be ready to draft. You all should be able to log into Strat Draft now. You should have received your login. If you didn't, go to stratdraft.com, click on Lost Password Username, type in the email address that you provided us on our website, and it should pop you right up. And right now, every single rookie is loaded. But bear in mind, and I mentioned this in an email, just because they're all loaded there, if they're not included in the game, they are not eligible to be drafted, and Calvin could make a mistake. So I would strongly suggest when the draft starts, if you see a player and you want to draft them, particularly in the later rounds, if you want to draft Joe Blow, you better make sure Joe Blow is in the game. Otherwise, you just blew your pick on an ineligible player like happens in the NFL. I try my best, but I don't know who's included yet. Now, if I get that disc with it filled out, then I think I can maybe fix it, but that's again kind of a pain in the butt on me because I have to check these 250 players in the rookie draft and make sure they're all there. So try to be careful. We don't, I don't want to come across like we're going to hit you over the head for every little thing you do. But I've learned over the year that I can't run 28 teams. I can't be backstop asking questions, answering all these questions. Am I legal? Am I not legal? Well, read the rules. We think the rules are pretty clear. If you don't think a rule is pretty clear, please help us make it better. Whew. And this is an atypical show for y'all in the PSAFL. We're usually talking predictions. There's usually more interactions and things like that. Len's had to step in and out a lot. He's learned, I guess there's fires near his area.
Yeah, we have forest fires around, so I don't see him coming close to my house yet, though. But
yeah,
could lose power, something like that.
If the house ain't there, I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a tough way to go to sleep, right? You lose it, fire burning at night.
Yeah, well, I usually get up around 3 a.m. to take a leak, so I'll check then.
Don't we all at this age?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yeah, and plus my dog, nothing else. She decides at 3 o'clock in the morning, hey, it'd be a good time to go walk and see if there's any
definitely
rabbits running around.
The dogs will wake you up. I've got one little dog that likes to push me out of the bed. He gets in between me and my wife, and then he keeps pushing against me until he gets me out of the bed.
I guess
Smart
one thing
dog.
I could say, too, if you've never used Strat Draft and you have questions, either send them on Slack. I think it's pretty easy to use, but again, I've used it for many years.
Strat Draft's pretty easy.
So you can do that. For the rookie draft, it's pretty straightforward. Free agent bidding is it's also pretty straightforward, but again, we will have another show on free agent bidding, and you'll be warned again. Don't blow all your money on one player unless you have only one active spot to fill. Because, again, those player salaries don't reset till we're done with free agency. So don't blow all your money because you have to be able to fill out a roster.
Yeah, that's right.
And we will be a little bit nicer to our newer owners, but our other owners know that if you screw up, two things happen. You lose that player, number one, and number two, you might get docked a fifth-round pick.
Yeah, most of our guys, they know better. They've been around for 10 years. So
yeah, I think we had one. We had Mr. Linder. I think he inadvertently screwed up in the PAFL, but
it still happens.
It can happen to me as well. I mean, honestly, I almost screwed up PAFL till I double checked it before the season started. I forget what rule I was almost in. I was short on top. Like, geez, I'm the commissioner and I got to pay attention. But I was distracted with real life as well. Anyway, that's all I had in mind, guys. Whatever y'all want to chat about.
No, I don't think I had anything myself. PSAFL is coming up after this season, so I'm sure there's probably some changes over there as well. We'll get around to do some shows for that too.
Yeah, PSFL, we still have 3 openings. Don thought he had another guy that might be interested, but he's never played the game. And once I heard never played the game, that's a slippery type slope. He has not confirmed. Don has sent him the roster.
Well, you got to watch them. That's the worst thing is who's never played before is, are they going to be dependable? If they can be dependable, then it's great to get those new guys in because, it gives us a bigger pool to draw from. But getting them to be dependable is the thing.
And what scares me, though, is getting taken to the cleaners on player values. That's where I have to pay close attention, and I usually will make somebody mad if I either
they'll
don't let them trade, don't
crappy
let them
trades.
Trade.
Yeah, they'll ruin their team if they're not
because
on
you
top
just
of
don't
it.
understand. The ratings are good and such, but there's still the PAFL. The action ratings play a huge factor.
Yep.
And you might love somebody who should be great, but action gives him a 6.
All right, guys, we are within 30
Yep.
seconds here, running out of time, so we're going to have
Perfect.
to end it. All right, guys.
Thank you.
I'll put this right up.
Thank you, Len.
All right, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.
All right.
That's all, folks.